Although both Superman and Shazam are two DC heroes, that was not always the case. In fact, they have a long and wild history together that resulted in a lawsuit. Hi, my name is Matt Smilix and today we are discussing the Superman vs Captain Marvel aka Shazam lawsuit. Superman made his debut in 1938 in Action Comics issue 1. This essentially gave birth to the superhero genre and is now referred to as the golden age of comics. Superman was everywhere, such as in newspaper comic strips, animated short movies, a TV series, and even a radio program. 1 year later, in 1939, Fawcett Comics released Whiz Comics issue 2, which featured a 12-year-old orphan named Billy Batson who could turn into a superpowered adult. Captain Marvel was a great success and he quickly got his own series called Captain Marvel Adventures, selling more than 1.4 million copies per issue. This series sold more copies than Superman. Captain Marvel was, at the time, the most famous superhero. He was so famous, he became the first superhero to get his own motion picture. Ironically, the studio behind this movie was Republic Pictures. Originally, they were working with National Comics Publications, or as we now know them, DC. They wanted to make a Superman movie, but DC already had a cartoon deal with Paramount Pictures, so they couldn't sign another deal. Therefore, Republic Pictures made a Captain Marvel movie. National Comics Publications was not happy, especially because Fawcett Comics once had a superhero named Masterman, who was basically a blatant copy of Superman. They stopped publishing Masterman after National Comics threatened with a lawsuit. So, National Comics thought Captain Marvel was just another one of their copies. Due to Captain Marvel's success, DC subtly added a few characteristics to Superman, such as being able to fly, having a bold mad scientist as an arch nemesis, and the start of the Superboy series after the teenage sidekick of Shazam or Captain Marvel proved to be very popular. So now who is copying who? In 1941, National Comics did decide to sue Fawcett Comics for a copyright infringement. This led to a 12-year-long legal battle. DC argued that Captain Marvel's powers and characteristics were too similar to Superman. For example, Billy had super strength, super speed, invulnerability, a skin-tight costume with a cape, and a news reporter alter ego. They even went as far as saying both had clean-cut faces. Fawcett Comics' counter-argument was that although there were similarities, they were not infringing. National Comics presented evidence of panels from their Superman comics in which Superman performed superheroic stunts, juxtaposed with panels of Captain Marvel doing the same things but on a later publication date. Fawcett countered in two ways. They did so by providing examples of Captain Marvel performing those stunts at earlier points of publication, and by providing examples of other heroes doing the same things in earlier published strips. Although the judge ruled that Captain Marvel was a copy of Superman, Fawcett Comics still won the case. It turns out that the copyright symbol had changed. The newspaper company that published the Superman comics had forgotten to replace the old symbols with the new ones on their latest strips. Therefore, DC had no copyright to Superman. For 2 whole years, DC did not own Superman, which meant that anyone could publish Superman stories without legal repercussions. Out of 160 Superman stories published between 1939 and 1950, less than half of them were from DC. Of course, DC signed an appeal and the decision was reversed. Captain Marvel was a duplicate of Superman and Fawcett Comics had to stop publishing the stories and pay DC for the damage. By 1950, the golden age of comics had ended and sales were dropping exponentially. Fawcett decided it wasn't worth fighting this battle any longer, so they paid $400,000 in damages. You'd think this was the end of it, but nope, it gets even more interesting. In 1966, another company called MF Enterprises started publishing their own Captain Marvel comics out of spite towards Timely Comics. Now, who the heck is Timely Comics? You probably guessed it by now. Timely Comics eventually rebranded to Marvel Comics. Timely had their debut with the Human Torch, which was an android that could ignite on fire. The creator of the Human Torch, Carl Burgos, was upset that Timely kept the copyright of this superhero after he left the company. Therefore, he decided to create a new Captain Marvel. This hero was also a robot who would shout the word "split", which allowed his body parts to separate. The individual parts could fly off to do whatever Captain Marvel wanted. By shouting "Shazam", he would be reassembled. Now, this version of Captain Marvel was a walking copyright infringement. He had a sidekick named Billy Baxton, he was the sole survivor of his planet, and he fought villains that resembled already existing characters like Plastic Man and the Bat. Since Marvel loved trademarking everything with the word Marvel, they offered him $6,000, which he refused. As a retaliation, Marvel made their own Captain Marvel, who was an alien spy named Mar-Vell. When Earthlings misunderstood his name, he used the nickname Captain Marvel. MF sued Marvel for trademark infringement and they settled. And guess who came back for more? DC set foot on the stage once again. Since Fawcett Comics stopped publishing because of them, they bought the rights to all of Fawcett's superheroes in 1972, which included the original Captain Marvel. They put the characters of Fawcett Comics in their own little universe since they didn't really fit the vibe with DC at the time. However, Marvel already used the Captain Marvel title. Both Marvel and DC's Captain Marvel were different enough from each other, which allowed both of them to be named Captain Marvel in the comics, although this did not apply to the title on the cover of their respective series. Marvel already used the name, so they got to keep it. DC decided to name him after the magic catchphrase Shazam. They did, however, use the original Captain Marvel on their covers. This was until Marvel got pissed off and made them remove it after 15 issues. In order for Marvel to keep the Captain Marvel trademark, they need to continue using the name. They tried this by giving Mar-Vell his own comic, which flopped. They tried a few new iterations, but none of them seemed to work. That was until Carol Danvers took on the mantle in 2012. It's crazy how this part of history was so important to get the characters we love today. Without Superman, we wouldn't have had Shazam, and if it hadn't been for Shazam, we would not have Captain Marvel. Ironically, without Shazam, we also would not have the Superman who can fly and has Lex Luthor as a villain. If you're interested in how comics have influenced the criminal justice system, then you can watch this video next. With that said, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!
Quacking noise. And more quacking noise.